All right, our apologies if we did miss a little bit. That's time. So, Mari just ran out of time. That's a shame, but she was really trying to make it work. She was rushing through the last part of the course, but apparently she lost some time earlier in the course, which means she could not finish. She did everything except for the repen, so that means she has most of the exercises done. She will have points for most of the exercises, just not the repen. That's the only one she missed. We will hear in a little bit what the score was, and hopefully now the live stream is stable and will continue to run.
Okay. Thank you very much, Mari. Thank you very much, Tito. It's a pity.
streaming style.
Pour cette team de Marie, c'est 76%. 76%. Neva. On applaudit, merci.
Welcome back. We have Magali with Neva on the field. I hope you can hear us. I'm not quite sure if everything is working yet. Good. I'm hearing that you can hear us, so that's nice. We will do our best to provide some live commentary with the runs. So we have Magali and Neva on the field. They are a French team. Neva is usually handled by Magali's husband Eric. So quite a challenge for Magali to work with this dog. And let's see how they do. They do have a difficult start. During the closing of the pen, the sheep started moving. And we have now one sheep who is working hard to get back to the flock. Very difficult to work with somebody else's dog, a dog that you don't normally handle. But in FMBB, people are only allowed to handle maximum 2 dogs. Eric already has 2 other dogs in the trial, and that's why they chose to have Magali handle Neva, but not such an easy job to do. So they are out of the pen, they have the flock under control, and now Magali can get on her way. So, if you have just joined our live stream, welcome. Welcome to the live stream of the 2025 FMBB World Championship Sheep Herding for Belgian Shepherds. We are very happy to be live here on YouTube, and we'll try to make sure we can send you very nice images of the rest of the event. This is the second day of the trial. Yesterday we had level 2 and level 1 on the field. And today, all day long, level 3 dogs, the highest level dogs, most experienced, most mature working dogs. And we've seen some really great runs already so far. Magali is, I think, dog number 10. Let me check my list if I have my hands free. Yes, Magali is dog number 10, Magali and Neva, our team number 10. We have 14 dogs in total, so still a bit to go. If you've been following our live stream on Facebook this morning, then you'll already know the course. And you will know that Magali has just completed her ascent of the Italian mountain road. Italian mountain roads tend to be quite windy with lots of turns. She's just done that. Now it's time to cross the mountain river. Crossing a bridge is always a bit tricky because it's narrow. And we do see one sheep going past, on this side at least. Of course, a bridge like this is a very nice imaginary bridge, but for the sheep and for the dogs, it's not real. They know it's not real. They know they can pass it. So, of course, it's not the same as in real life. And that makes it more difficult to get everybody on board. But it does help if the dog releases the pressure a bit and the sheep can stretch out a bit more instead of being clustered together. They didn't quite manage to do that, but almost all the sheep came across. So very nice. Magali is working hard, so she's decided to take her coat off and looking for a place to leave it without losing her sheep preferably. But that is a shame because it is causing a bit of unrest in the flock. Alright, all sheep are back and now Magali has to put them inside the trailer. We've been seeing all day long that the sheep go in quite easily. but don't always come out that easily. So let's see how they are doing now with Magali. So, very nice job getting them on. Everybody's in, so that's good enough. But this is a very strange situation for the sheep because they're used to, whenever they go on the trailer, to being transported. So they will spend some time on a closed trailer, and then once it opens, they know they can come out. But of course now we're asking them to come out immediately without any driving, without even closing the trailer. And that's very confusing for the sheep, so they won't just turn around and walk out. So Magali is asking Neva to lie down somewhere near the front of the trailer so that the sheep who are thinking about exiting won't see her. Neva's not agreeing with Magali that that's a good idea. Of course, it is also a very difficult task that we do ask of the dog because their instinct is always to contain the sheep. So when they see that the sheep start walking out of the trailer, the instinct of the dog would be to block the sheep and drive them back into the trailer. That's of course not helpful, and this is one of the instances where we can't have the dog work only on instinct, and they really do need some obedience. So Neva's now inside the trailer. And Magali has asked her to stop there. We can see her through the opening. She's not standing still, but she is gently pushing the sheep out. And actually it's worked quite nicely. Sheep didn't panic, they didn't fly out, and they came out quite controlled. So it was quite a nice job. She didn't lose any time in that. The time for the course, for the entire course, is 30 minutes. It is quite tight. So not everybody has been able to finish the complete course on time. So it's very good to see that Magali was able to finish this on time. Neva just going to check if there's no more sheep left in the trailer. I can't see into the trailer, so maybe there are, but probably not because Magali is continuing. So we can see that Neva is quite active. She is pushing the sheep past the shepherd a little bit every now and then. And Magali is asking her to lie down, but not completely getting through to her. Neva did decide to go and see where actually her normal handler is. Eric is here on the sideline, so it's quite normal that she goes and checks out where he is, but luckily she's back to work. And they are into the sorting area. So here the job is to stabilize the flock within the series of gates and fences which is there, and then to separate 3 random sheep, or at least 3 sheep of the shepherd's choice. Some people are searching for very specific sheep that they like to separate, but others are choosing to simply take whoever is first at the gate. It seems that Magali is just taking the first 3 sheep. It's only for quite a short part of the course that they are separated, so it doesn't seem to make sense to spend a whole lot of time to find specific sheep to separate. But if you have a troublemaker in your flock, and this happens every now and then of course it can be beneficial to separate that specific sheep. So it is nice to see that the dog is working independently to keep the flock together, and that's really what the judges want to see. The shepherd in this case is focused on a different task and can't watch the dog and the sheep all the time. And we definitely want to see the dog working independently at that moment to keep the sheep under control and next to the shepherd. We don't necessarily like to see the dog wasting a lot of energy. So now Neva chose to circle the flock non-stop. That is using a lot of energy. Imagine this is not just a 30-minute course, but a 10 or 12-hour working day for the dog. And of course, also the dog has to conserve energy as much as possible and not spend it on things which are not necessary. All right. Sheep have been retrieved. Magali had to go and fix a little flexi net. She did that. 3 separated sheep have to be left behind. We can see Neva going back and checking on them. Dogs really don't like to leave sheep behind. They know they should all be together. And it's quite a difficult task for the dog to leave some sheep behind. And Neva is struggling a little bit with that. But there she goes, focused on her work. They are now in the alley. In the alley they will encounter some traffic. The car is already coming. And it's the dog's job to keep the sheep safe. So ideally we like to see the dog push the sheep to the left side in this particular case. And guard the sheep and actually be in between the car and the sheep. That's the most ideal scenario, that the dog is in between the car and the sheep and keeping the flock moving. They did manage to move very smoothly past the car. I didn't see the car slowing down. I didn't see the flock slowing down. So in general, that's quite a good exercise. Very shortly after exiting the alley is a stop. The dog has a little bit of space to go around the flock after the alley, but not a lot. So it's quite a tricky stop to come out of an alley like that, where the dog can't really pass the sheep and then have to go into a stop. So the stop is basically a pretend road crossing. We pretend there's a road there and we want to stop the flock from walking into the road so we can check if traffic is coming or not. And only when we see the road is clear can the flock move into the road and keep going. After the stop, Magali needs to reunite the flock, so she's picking up the 3 sheep which were left behind. Neva is very eager to do that, getting a little bit ahead of herself. The shepherd has the choice how to execute this task, so the judges only said, please reunite your flock. And we see that a lot of handlers are choosing to bring their big flock of 22 sheep back to the sorting pen and then go and release the 3 sheep. I think Magali wants to leave the sheep there where they are now, because the sheep do want to go to the exit, which is to the right of us. The dog needs to stay in front of the flock, otherwise they will start moving towards the exit. And with the other flock so close by, the 3 sheep in the separating pen are very likely to just move ahead with the flock, as they've done now. Magali will go and close the pen, because we never leave any gates open in the farm. That's always a big no-no. So again, we see Neva looking around, maybe looking for Eric, who knows? Or perhaps she is very much aware that there are more sheep on the property. There's no direct line of sight between the sheep on the field and the other sheep, but of course they know the rest of the flock is there. Dogs have great senses, much better than ours, and they don't need to be able to see them to know that they're there. So they're off to the grazing area. They have 3 minutes of grazing, in which it's the dog's job to make sure the sheep stay within the marked area. There's a very clear marking on the ground, not visible for us from here, but it's very clear for the sheep and for the dogs. And here the judges really like to see the dog working independently, understanding what the task is, understanding that the sheep need to stay inside the area, but for the rest should not be bothered, and working independently without a lot of commands or help. So we have seen quite good grazing by the sheep, but sheep only do graze when they feel relaxed. So it's always a very good test. That's a shame. Neva's gone and disturbed the sheep. But they are back in the grazing area. And Magali is asking Neva to cool it a little bit, take a moment, take some rest, and catch their breath. Probably Magali also needs that. It's been hard work for her, managing a dog which is not the one she normally runs with. Of course, Neva does live in her house together with her husband Eric, but working with your dog is something very different than living with your dog. So in order to trigger the shepherd to not be able to focus on the dog so much, one of the judges is going over and making some small talk. The purpose is to distract them so they can't focus on the dog, and the dog can show that it's able to work independently. Of course, if the sheep are not moving and staying well within the boundaries, there isn't necessarily any work to do for the dog. And it seems now the sheep are all grazing, very much relaxed, putting their head down and staying within the area. So we really like to see sheep like that to graze in the grazing area. It means they're not experiencing pressure from the dog, at least not enough to disturb them. And it means they feel comfortable and safe to put their heads down. When sheep feel unsafe, they always have their head up because they want to see as much as possible of their surroundings. When they have their head down to graze, they have much less vision, and they won't do that if they don't feel safe. So that is what happens in real life sometimes. The neighbors are walking their dog just past the grazing area. That's really not ideal. It's disturbing the sheep, and it's also triggering the dog, Neva in this case, to react to the passing dog. We tried to prevent that, but unfortunately this one slipped through. Of course, the judges will typically be understanding if something like that happens, and I don't think the sheep left the grazing area, so that's okay. So grazing time is up. Magali went to the post, and now the job of the dog is to retrieve the sheep. This is usually done either with an outrun or a retrieve. We did see Neva grabbing a sheep for a bit. It's a correction that dogs can give to sheep that are misbehaving in their eyes. In this case, one sheep separated, and the dog felt the need to give a correction. But of course, we can't tolerate that behavior. It's up to the judges to decide how serious it is. When they see a proper bite with any risk of injury from the sheep, then it's an immediate disqualification. But when they feel that it's a more innocent interaction between the dog and the sheep, and there's no injury, for sure no injury, because the dog has only gotten some wool, then they could decide to give a warning only once and then let the handler continue. If it does happen again, for sure she will be disqualified. But for now, the judges who have been very close to when it happened have decided that it's safe to keep on going. So while Neva was focusing on a sheep behind, unfortunately the rest of the flock decided to head home, and in trying to bring back the sheep which were running, again Neva grabbed hold of a sheep. So judges have just said, this is it, thank you very much for your work, but this is behavior we don't want to see with a dog. So it was a lot of very good work by Magali and Neva. Very difficult to jump in with somebody else's dog, but I really enjoyed watching them. Wasn't easy, but lots of nice parts in the course. A shame it ended this way, but who knows, we'll see them on the field again together. I need to check my list. Let me check my list. Yes, Pescora Quana, nickname Kora. Karin and Kora were at FMBB last year in Italy, still on level 2. In the meantime, they have progressed to level 3, as good dogs do, good teams do. And we'll see how they do here today in lovely sunny Weert. So yesterday was quite windy, quite fresh, but now sun has come out, it's quite a lot warmer, and we even see some people taking their sweaters off. Don't think you'll see anybody in bikini today, not quite that warm, except maybe for some dogs who are wearing their bikinis. Because of the hormones that happens, but yeah, not today. So very nice calm exit of the pen. Beginning of the trial is always tricky. The sheep and the handler and the dog don't know each other yet. Sheep have to decide if they're going to trust this person who has just introduced himself for the very first time, if they're going to trust this dog, which they've never seen before. And they only take a few moments to make this decision. So from the moment that you enter the field, from the moment that they can see you, hear you, smell you, they are making a decision on whether or not they will trust you. And if you exhibit behavior or act in certain ways that makes them to not trust you, that will make the entire course so much more difficult. And the same goes for your dog. In lower levels, you do quite often still see people coming into the field, taking their dog off leash, and the dog going off to have a bit of a party. Around the pen, sometimes even in the pen, while the handler is still getting ready to get started. But already before the start, before the opening of the pen, they will have lost about half of their goodwill of the sheep, because the sheep already know, oof, this is going to be difficult. This is not a dog that's under control. We should not trust the person that comes with this dog. So a calm start with very controlled behavior by the dog, very calm, respectful behavior by the dog is so important for the entire course. It can make or break the rest of your trial. Very nice start for Karin. And they go off around the trailer in the direction of the windy Italian mountain roads. So of course in the Italian mountains they can be very steep. The roads make a lot of bends, make a lot of turns to try to get up to a high altitude. And every time you go around the corner, the dog has to compensate, change his position to adjust and to make sure the flock keeps going in the right direction. Sheep always like to cut corners, especially when you have a bigger flock. They can see the sheep ahead of them and decide to take the shortest route towards them. And that's not necessarily where you want the sheep to be. So there's very much a balance exercise. Every time you change position and go around the corner, the dog has to adjust accordingly. So they've reached high altitude and are now coming across a very dangerous mountain stream. They don't want anybody in the water. It's very fast moving water, so all the sheep and the shepherd and the dog need to go across the bridge. It's very nice. The dog did come into the flock a little bit, but the sheep were not really worried about her. And they crossed in a very nice and easy way. No running, no pushing. and nobody in the water, so that's always good news. The bridge, of course, is fake. The sheep and the dog know that. We pretend it's real, but the animals know much better than we do. We did put some fake water next to it. It helps a little bit to create the illusion of a bridge and a river, but they still know that they're safe to go across the plastic if they wanted to. That's a shame. Next job is to put all the sheep in the trailer. She was almost there, but 3 sheep decided that was a little bit too full for their taste. Karen is choosing to ask her dog to wait at the entrance of the trailer and to go around herself, pushing the sheep. Now, these sheep are not afraid of people at all. They are used to walking with people, but not necessarily ahead of people. And Karen is finding out that they're not really walking for her that much. So in the end, it was the dog who brought them in exactly how it's supposed to be. Now, the instruction of the judges was very clear on the trailer. No people allowed inside. So it's not an option for Karen to go in and push the sheep out. So let's see what her solution is to bring them out. Sheep have very limited sight when they're in the trailer. There are a few of the windows open, but still a lot of the sheep won't be able to see the dog, which means they don't feel the pressure of the dog either. So Karen is trying to feel and experience how the sheep are reacting. Are they willing to follow her? But not quite, it seems. Of course, a lot of sheep are facing the wrong way. And sheep is, in this sense, a very simple animal. It goes where its head is pointing. If the head is pointing in the wrong way, they're not going to follow you. There is a door in front of the trailer. The dog is allowed to go in. Of course, it's the risk of when the dog going in, the sheep flying out. That's not what we like to see. We like to see very calm and safe handling of the sheep. So the handler will know if her dog is able to do this work or not. But while Karen has her head in the trailer, Kora has decided to check out the bigger opening and see if that's not maybe a better option. So there we go, Kora in the trailer. And Karen has asked her to wait and not push too hard because she doesn't want to create a panic. She doesn't want the sheep to run out or push each other. And now she's going in front and very likely the sheep will want to follow her. So they came out really nicely. Very calm. Of course, it always makes a lot of noise, the hooves of the sheep on the metal trailer. But they came out in a very nice and calm way. No pushing, no running. And that's exactly what we like to see. Very good work by the dog. It demands a lot of self-control for the dog to be in such a tight space with the sheep right in front of her and not push too much, not put too much pressure on the sheep. And she did really, really well. Of course, a good farmer always closes everything that he opens. So Karen has gone and closed the trailer. And now Kora is going around to collect all the sheep to make sure they can continue on their way. It's always very nice to have international trials where you hear handlers speak to their dogs in many different languages. I think that I know the commands for border patrol, wait, left and right in about 6 or 7 different languages, but I wouldn't be able to say any other word in Czech or in Hungarian or in Italian. But it's funny how you always recognize these words. Next up is the sorting area. The flock needs to be stabilized inside of the fences. And then 3 sheep need to be sorted into a small pen, which is just adjacent. It's up to the shepherd to decide which 3 sheep. They're not marked. And while the shepherd is focusing on this type of job, the judges like to see the dog working independently to contain the sheep. So it's not a problem that the sheep go a little bit outside of the fences. They should not decide to leave on their own. And ideally, the dog, without any commands, will see the sheep on the move and decide to go around and contain them. In this case, Karen has asked her dog to sit down, and it's quite an obedient dog, so she is sitting down and not working independently. And in some ways, it's a shame. It's nice to see obedience in the dog, but what we would really like to see, what the judges were aiming at, is independent work. And by asking her dog to sit down, she's not allowed to do that independent work. Of course, Karen can have a very good reason to do that. Maybe she knows this is very tricky for her dog. Maybe she thinks that this is the best way to keep the sheep calm. But what the judges are really after is seeing the dog work on its own initiative without the direction of the shepherd. And I think Karen... No, she's not forgetting something. Good. So now the dog's job is to keep the sheep in this area for a little bit while Karen goes over and fixes a fence which has fallen down. And once the fence is fixed, she will go back, pick up the sheep, and bring them into the alleyway. It's often quite difficult for dogs to leave sheep behind, but Kora seems to be fully focused on her task. And going straight into the alley. Very nice. So once in the alley, they will get some traffic. A car will drive their way. And it's the dog's job to keep all the sheep safe. So ideally, the dog will push the sheep a little bit to the left, will position herself in between the sheep and the car, and make sure this way the flock and the car can pass each other safely. So we don't like to see the car having to brake for the sheep or the dogs. And I didn't see that. And we ideally also don't like the flock having to stop to correct something. Because as long as they're moving, it's always a little bit more smooth than when they have to stop. So that looked like a very nice exercise. No problem for the traffic. Then immediately after the alley is a stop. There's only a small bit of space for the dog to leave the alley and go around the flock. But that seems like a very nice stop. The judges want to see the dog actually stop the sheep, not just the handler stopping walking. And from what I could tell from over here, that looked pretty good. So the sheep were retrieved. Looks like that was quite an easy job. Sheep are grazing very calmly. It's nice to see. Sheep are not stressed at all. They don't mind being left behind there for a little bit. Don't feel the need to go wandering. which is a good sign. Means they're relaxed. And that means it's a good job so far by Karen and Kora from the Czech Republic. Next up is the grazing. They will have 3 minutes of grazing. For those of you who are not so familiar with traditional style herding, the history of the breeds in this discipline comes from basically mainland Europe, where the shepherds would graze their sheep on different fields every day or every so many days. And these fields would typically be unfenced because they don't spend a lot of time there. And at night the sheep would be kept in a enclosure, safe enclosure in a village or in a farm, in a building.
Hello everybody, I can see that we have some visitors here. So
now it's going to be a bit tricky because we also have a speaker who is talking here locally on the microphone. We hope that it won't interfere too much with each other.
High-level competition is organized. Last year it has been organized in Italy.
But let us know if it does, because then I will stop talking for a bit and we'll just listen to Jitka.
In the Netherlands.
But I was saying, the tradition of herding in Europe, so the sheep would be kept in a enclosure for the night, and in the morning the shepherd and his dog would go and pick up the flock. They would move them to wherever the grazing was, and on the way to this grazing field they would have to, for example, pass rivers, bridges, roads, traffic, as we've just seen. Perhaps they need to navigate a village. They might pass fields with nice crops in them where the sheep are not allowed to go in. And ultimately they would arrive at a field where they are allowed to graze for the day. As this field is not fenced, it's the dog's job to make sure the sheep stay in the area where they are allowed to graze. And that's
right now they are working their grazing exercise. That means that they're approximately, and also by borderline, which in this case is marked by a plastic tube instead of plugging line into the grass right now.
Hard because unfortunately it's not feasible to take 2 hours for grazing per participant for obvious reasons. So in a trial it's usually just a few minutes. It's not enough to mimic the real situation in grazing, because the longer the sheep stand there, the more they will fan out, the more they will each find their own piece of favorite grass that they like, and the bigger the flock spread.
Pasture where they will feed. So Karin is now exercising a nice grazing. You can see that the sheep is very relaxed.
80 meters in
grass.
circumference, so typically it's 20 by 20, but it can be any other shape as well. And the sheep stay there for a few minutes to allow at least a little bit of the natural grazing behavior to show up. And we do see that now in this flock as well. It's really nice. The sheep are all grazing, but they're moving during the grazing, and that's typical. That's what sheep do, because they never stay in one place very long. They eat some grass and they take a few steps and take another few bites of grass. So they do have to stay within the area, so it's the dog's job to guard that area. Grazing time is over now, and when the grazing is over, it is nice for the shepherd if he doesn't have to walk across the entire field and collect his sheep, but instead he can send his dog to collect the sheep and to bring them to the shepherd. Kora has done this in a really nice way, not disturb the sheep very much, brought them straight back to the shepherd, and then they can continue on their way, basically on their way home, because after the grazing, most likely the shepherd will take his flock back home for the night.
What is very important to see with every dog is that calm movement. You can see that the sheep is not panicking. They're just slowly walking with their handler which they really like to follow because they trust the person. And the dog is just taking care that all the sheep are continuing like so. Right now, Kora has just corrected the one last sheep which is stuck in a corner. Hey lady, you have to follow with the rest of the flock too. What are they doing now is a difficult obstacle, which is somehow mimicking a work in a hills, bushes, and sometimes perhaps you have to do some turns and the dog has to balance the flock even in a difficult environment. And they have done very well because all the sheep has passed through the gates as they were supposed to. Right now they are getting ready for another exercise, which is a
Going
drive.
into the alley,
Until
starting a
now you have
drive.
seen that Karin has been working first.
And the drive means the
followed
dog
by
has
the
to
flock,
push the
and
sheep
then
away
Kora,
from the
the
handler.
dog, is making sure at the end that everybody follows. But you can see that now Kora must push the sheep away from the handler, while the handler stays somewhat behind the dog. This is quite complicated for traditional style breeds to do so, because they are so natural in gathering and bringing the sheep to their pupil. And if you should teach them to push the sheep away from you and not to be scared of losing them, that's a hard task to do. You must start this training from a very puppy, so that the dog will understand that there's nothing to be afraid of, and you can still control your flock even from behind. Reaching the end of the netting, they will collect their flock right now and continue to another exercise. The next exercise is a stop. So right now they will start walking in a standard way, so-called drive together. Now Karin will try to slow down a little bit so that the sheep can pass her a little bit in front. And at that moment when the sheep is in front of her, she calls Kora to the front to stop her flock. While Kora is holding the flock in a steady position, she goes pretend to check whether there is to bring the sheep along again and continue in their walk. And soon ladies will reach one of the last exercises.
Last exercise before the repen
which is
to
the field,
a
but
bit
there's
of
another net
vegetation.
few meters away.
So this is
Inside
where
of the field. Underneath that mat there are bowls for food for sheep. They are familiar with them and they know that they can expect that there will be food inside. Right now there is not, because that would be very, very strong draft for the sheep. But Karin will pretend to go there and to kind of put something inside so the sheep might think, probably we will be now allowed to eat. But what the task of the not to allow them to go there, because this is so-called protection. See, the sheep is a little bit slightly pushing towards the bowls, but the dog must be on the side not to allow them to eat that. This type of task is simulating a situation. For example, while you would be walking with your flock towards some pasture and you would meet or you will pass by a neighbor's field.
So last exercise left for Karin and Kora
so
is to repen the sheep.
Into his field and eat his grass or whatever kind of agriculture is there.
All right, so
the dog
maybe
must protect the kind
there
of
was no
area
sound for a
from the
little
sheep
while.
entering it.
Apologies if that was the case. We're not completely
And
sure
there we
if it
are
was or
at
wasn't
the
there, but we're here
almost the
now.
end of the trial. Now
And
Karin is trying to
last
stabilize her
exercise for
flock
Karin and Kora
and
is to put the sheep back into the pen.
has Kora on a
So
correct
they've spent
position so
all
that the
day
sheep will
long
not follow her
out
because
in
she
the big
wants to
world.
open the gate
Sheep have
for
eaten
the
their bellies
pen.
full and it's time to put them away for the night.
And then she will ask
Of course, we
Kora
want to put the
release
sheep
her
into
home
the shed or into the
and
pen
bring
in
the
this
sheep
case
back
in
to
a
the pen.
calm and orderly way. They are tired, they've eaten all day,
Important that
and we
this
don't want
exercise
them
is
to
that
get stressed
everybody's
just before
coming
going
in
to bed.
very easy.
So the
No
sheep know the
banging
pen
on
very
the
well. They
gates,
don't mind
no
going in. They
jumping,
don't have
so
stress
it was
going into the
exactly
pen.
like it's supposed to
And we
be.
see that goes very
And
easily.
that's it. Congratulations.
That is really, really good work by Karen and Kora. They would have quite a high score, I would expect. We will hear the score in just a minute or so as soon as the judges have finished their calculations. And we will hear what the score is. Scores can be found on the Herding FMBB website. So if you want to know where we are so far in terms of scores, go check out the website. Let me find.
Není nutno, aby bylo přímo veselo. Hlavně nesmí být smutno, natož aby se brečelo.
Yeah.
Není nutno, aby bylo přímo veselo. Hlavně nesmí být smutno, natož aby se brečelo. Není nutno, aby bylo přímo veselo. Hlavně nesmí být.
So put your hands together for Karin and Kora. Well done.
Není nutno, aby bylo přímo veselo.
Especially for her Czech song.
Natož aby se brečelo.
Není nutno. And another one. Rivers of Babylon in Czech music.
Tam, kde kdysi byl Babylon, je holá pláň a příchozím tam vítr píseň hrává o tom, že tam byl Babylon a plodná stráň a klid a řád a všude kolem tráva, všude tráva. Příchozí se ptá, kam zmizel ten ráj, snad je to jenom klam a lež. Ta píseň je příliš stará, snad se mýlí. Snad se mýlí. Moudrý vítr hrál pak dál na šalmaj, že stávala tu kdysi věž. A dnes je tu jen pír a písek, prach a víry.
Okay. So, score of Karin and Kora, 98% and a half. Wow. 98,5 points.
So the score for Karen, very, very good work, 98.5%. I think that brings her straight into first place at the moment, but we're not done, we still have more dogs to go.
So, going over to our next competitor in a few moments. Just a few practice and Lenus. She brought her fan club with her.
And we are back in action. We have Lisa Sarjanen with Lenus on the field. Lisa and Lenus are a very experienced team. They've been working together for quite a while, done many trials, and we're excited to see them work today. Lisa and Lenus are from Finland. There's a very healthy Finnish delegation here. They did have to leave one dog behind in Finland because the lady decided to come into heat, and she will be mated this week, so no trip to Holland for her. But the rest of the Finnish team is here and looking good.
And I am back again, and we are seeing Lisa and
we
Linus
also
on
have
the field.
our local speaker,
Just
Jitka,
let
speaking.
them
We hope it's not interfering too much.
Start this first part.
Let's see how we
So
can
that I
go
don't
with
disturb
the
you too much,
sound.
and then
I
I'll
won't
tell
be
you
talking
what's
too much.
happening.
Probably you all already know the course. You know the exercises. And I might not have to explain a lot, but I will come in every now and then and say something.
So we have seen a nice exit from the pen and taking control of the flock. Perhaps Linus feels a little bit under pressure. You see he's eating sometimes some bull, but so it's kind of a way how to release a little bit of pressure of his own feeling. Because of course the handler is asking him to be very calm so that the sheep will stay relaxed also. Sometimes for a long-haired dog like he is, this kind of long hair when he runs and it's so fluffy causes the sheep to feel a little more afraid than for a short-haired dog. Might be also a reason, but mainly the feeling of the dog and their attitudes is what is bringing the sheep to stay calm. Linus is very obedient. It's very nice. He listens to all the commands of the handler to change the position, to stop or lie down. And they are right now executing a little slalom in between those barrels. Each time all the sheep must pass each gate. In sheep herding, the most important thing is that the sheep is relaxed and they are moving in a steady and calm way. So, a steady pace without extra stops or any harsh running is what is the most important to see. Right now, they are approaching a bridge. This is a simulation of a real-life situation where on the way to the grazing area, to the mountains, you would be probably passing some river over the bridge. You see the blue plastics on the side, which is simulating some kind of water. So the main rule is everybody has to pass over the bridge, including the handler and the sheep and the dog. And now, unfortunately, Lenus has decided to bring the sheep which is running away, and in the middle of the bridge, he
So
made
this
a
is
wider
always a
outrun
little bit
for
risky with the
saving
bridge. The bridge
situation.
is exactly in the
So
direction
there
of the
will
exit
be
of the
probably
field.
some points
And
lost
while the
for
dog is
him to
patiently
exit too
waiting
early from the
behind
bridge,
and waiting
but
for the
I
sheep to
think
cross, it is
definitely
possible that the
the
first sheep get
intention
the
of
idea
saving
that
the
they can
flock
go
from
and run away.
escaping would be appreciated.
We could see right from the beginning that Lenus has
And
quite
at the
some
same
impact
time, we
on
have
the
to
sheep.
say that he has
Of
collected
course,
the
he's
sheep
a
in a
boy,
nice
he's quite big,
way.
he has quite a lot of hair. So in the eyes of the sheep,
And
he
then
is
now
perhaps
we can
quite
continue to the
impressive.
next task, which is loading
And
the
we see
trailer.
that the sheep are a little bit sensitive to Lenus. And when they were on the bridge, they saw their opportunity
So we know those
to
sheep,
go
they
and
are
head off
moved
home.
from time to time from pasture to pasture, so they are quite familiar with being loaded on a trailer. So you could see that they are quite easily going up the trailer. They just have to, the handler and the dog must take care that no one goes around or chooses some other direction, but basically they must all be on the top, at least on the top of the first ramp. Okay, there we have a
So
happy
sheep
there.
don't have to go all the way in the trailer as soon as
So I
everybody's at
think
least on
actually
the ramp.
exercise has
That's
been
good enough.
completed because
The
already
judge
all
has
the sheep
just
has
given
been
the
up there.
sign that it was good enough.
And right
So
now
the
there will
sheep
be
jumping
second part
back
of this
out is
exercise,
not an
which is
issue.
quite more
But of course,
complicated.
these
For a
sheep,
reason, the sheep really like to stay on
these sheep
the trailer.
heading off with the
Venus
dog
has a
behind
lot
them,
of
that of
power,
course is an
so
issue.
just one time
That's what
going
we don't like
behind
to
the
see,
trailer and the sheep
with the
nicely
sheep
out.
exiting the trailer
Though
and running
he already
away.
tried to go back home, and now he must have a little hard work to collect them again.
So Lenus is choosing to focus on the biggest part of the flock, but there are 4 or 5 sheep, I think, in the
A wise
corner.
decision by
Lisa
Lisa
does need to go
to
and pick
calm
them
down
up.
the situation, and it's always good to bring the larger
So
part
she's
of the
sending
flock
Lenus
and go
over to the
for
corner.
smaller part for the flock.
That is a very difficult job
To
for the
collect
dog
them.
to do. He has to squeeze himself in between the sheep and the fence and then stay behind them. Lenus has done so quite smoothly with a little bit of speed. But now all the sheep have been reunited and Lisa can continue on the way. It does mean
And they
that
are
she
back
didn't
again
lose a
together.
lot of time with the trailer.
They must
We've
just
seen with
relax
other
and calm down
competitors
again,
that
and they can
sometimes the
continue.
sheep didn't want to come out of the trailer and they lost quite a bit of time
The
or spent
next
quite a bit of
task
time
is
getting
to
them
separate
out.
3 sheep.
That was not necessary for Lisa,
This
but of
is
course
like
she
in
will
real-life
lose
situation
quite some points
where
for
you-
the way
you would
that the
have
sheep
to, on a
came out
regular
and
basis,
for
check your
losing
sheep.
control over
You
the
should
sheep
vaccinate
for a
them,
little bit.
you must deworm them.
But she's got
Sometimes you
control
want to
back,
sell
she has the
them.
flock
For
moving
those
calmly
reasons, you
again,
need to be able to catch your
and
sheep.
now she will
And
move
catch a
into the
particular sheep
fencing
if he
area
needs to.
where
And
her
then, for
task
that
is
reason, you will
to
have your
separate
dog
3
holding
sheep
your
from the
flock.
rest of the flock.
In this situation, they are supposed to enter this partially open pen area with 4 different openings. The dog must guard that the sheep will stay inside, while the handler will be selecting 3 sheep to the small pen, to the small enclosure. In this situation, the judges has asked that the handler can choose whichever 3 sheep he likes to select. So it depends on the strategy of each handler, whether they only bring in 3 closest sheep and they make their life a little easier, or if they select some particular sheep, perhaps some which they think they're little troublemakers, And then they need to take a little more time to find them, to catch them, and then close them to the small enclosure. Of course, what is very important in this situation is to take care of good welfare of the sheep. They don't want to be catched by people. They are not accustomed to that really much. And so you have to be very careful. Normally you catch the sheep by the
So
leg.
we can see
or
Lisa
possibly
working
hand.
to separate 3
Perhaps if
sheep.
they
She
don't have
did
horns,
have
which might be a
one
little
sheep
tricky,
in the separation
head.
pen, but
You
while
should
she
not
was
hold the
busy
wool or
catching
the
the second
horns.
one,
Is that built
the
in
first one
definitely
escaped
painful
again.
for the
So
sheep.
sheep always want to stay together. They are a bit
Also, you
claustrophobic.
shouldn't
They
lift
don't
the
like to be in
feet
tight
too
spaces.
high, or,
So
when you
the
lift
sheep,
little
all
lamb,
by
you
herself
can actually
in a
hold
little
it in
pen,
hands
wasn't
because they are
feeling
quite
comfortable
light,
at all,
but not to throw them
and decided
from
to
some
take her
too
chance
high
and go back to the
distance
rest
on
of the flock.
floor. So you must be very careful and gentle.
So it
because
would
they are
probably
living
help
beings.
Lisa if Linus would bring the sheep a little bit closer to the entry of the separation pen. This requires a lot of self-control and strength of the dog. We don't want the
So
dog
this
to
exercise
push
takes some
so far,
patience.
so hard that
Also
he
for
scatters the
dog to
sheep,
keep on working
but we do
steadily
want
and not
him to push the sheep a
rush
little
the
bit
sheep
closer to
anyhow.
where Lisa
Just
is,
keep them near the
so
handle.
that she has the option to move the sheep into the separation
Because
pen.
if they would have a choice, they would definitely leave this situation.
This is a very, very good example of why herding work is such a good way of telling apart the good dogs from the less talented dogs in a breed, in a herding breed. It requires so much of the dog, a very cool head. It needs to be smart, it needs to be cooperative, it has to have a certain level of independence, but also, very important, a good level of collaboration. And what we are really asking the dog to do is to balance its own instinct with its will to work for us and with us. And that's not an easy thing. It's not a given thing. Not
So
all dogs
if
have
things
that
the
good
three sheep are
balance.
in the little enclosure,
working
unfortunately they are right
With
now out
your
of the
herding breeds,
pen.
herding with your herding
So
breeds
probably that's
is a
gonna
really,
cost
really
point or
good
two.
tool,
But on the other hand,
which can be
they're
used also for
calmly
selection
waiting
of breeding
for the handler
dogs.
and the dog to finish their
A dog
work,
that
to close properly
cannot
the
be
gate,
successful in herding
and then they
because
can
he's
continue
nervous,
their
because
work.
he's insecure, because he's easily
So now
intimidated,
first they
because
have
he
to
doesn't like
put
to
them
work,
actually back
because he
to this
doesn't like
enclosure
to
because the
work for the
exercise
owner,
continues,
but just
so
goes off by himself
that
to
the
work.
dog will be
These are all
holding the sheep
traits that we
inside,
really don't like in a
and
herding
the
breed.
handler
That's
will
not
have to go
natural
to
for a
correct the
herding breed.
netting, which is
And they are
right now
traits that
falling
really
down
come to
for
light
purpose, so that
when
there
you're doing
is
herding
some
work with
netting
them.
to correct.
That's also
You will just
why
see in a very
there
moment.
are several countries, several breed clubs who require
So now
dogs
Linus
to
is
do at
positioned
least
in
basic
between
herding work
the
before they're
sheep
allowed to breed.
and the direction of the handler,
Um,
so that the sheep
It
will not
might
follow him
be
nor run to
difficult
the
because in
corner
many countries
towards
it's not
their
so
home
easy
where
to
the
find
rest of the
even a
flock
place
is.
to train your dog and to learn about it
So Lisa is
yourself.
picking up
But
the
it is a
part of
very,
the
very useful
net
tool
which was
in
lying
breeding
on the ground. She's
to select the right
putting it back
characters
there
and
where it's
also
supposed
the
to
health of the
be,
dog. Of course, if
which
the dog
was
is
a
working
practical
for long
exercise, a
periods
little
of
thing that
time,
you have to do in
it needs to
everyday
be
life
healthy. It
with
needs
sheep,
to be able to
just to go
move,
correcting
move
netting.
smoothly. It needs to have healthy
now
heart and lungs
Linus
and
is going
joints
to
and back.
bring the sheep to
And it
Lisa.
needs to be able to
A
continue
little
working
trouble, he
also
was
up
little bit
until
trying to
a
go
decent
farther away
senior
behind
age.
the net, but
A
no, now
dog
he
should
gets
not
it,
be
and he
be
brought the sheep
done
nicely.
working when he's 7 or 8. It takes easily 4 to 5 years
The
to bring a
next
dog up to
exercise
a good
is
level of
very
work.
important.
So most of
It's
the
only
dogs here in level
executed
3
level
will
3
be
though,
at least
because it's
4 or
quite
5,
complicated.
probably older, a
It
lot
is the
older
traffic
sometimes.
exercise.
And
That
of course,
means
if you've
that the
taken
dog
4 or 5
must lead
years
the
to
sheep
teach your dog, to
near
educate
the
your dog,
traffic, near
to
the
allow your dog to grow and
driving car.
develop, you don't want to have to
So the
retire
ideal
him when he's 7
situation
or
is
8. You want to
that the
have
dog
a,
will
a
stay on the
long
side of
working
the
life
clock
of your dog. It's very
with his
helpful
pressure, make it a
and
little
very important
longish,
also for
I
the
would
breed for
say,
sure,
so that
that
there
the
is
dog
enough
is able to
space
work
for
up
the
until
car
a
to pass
high
by.
age, and he is both mentally
Of
and
course, the most
physically
important
still
is the safety
healthy
of both
at
the
that
sheep
age and
and
able
the
to
dog.
work. It's a really good
So
test
this must be
for any
very
dog in a
well
breed.
prepared, and the dog
All right,
and the sheep
we
must
have come to the
understand
traffic exercise.
that they
Car
must
is
be
coming their way,
safe
and
and
it's
the
the
dog
dog's
move from
job
their side.
to protect
You
the
see
sheep
us asking the
from the
dog to
car.
go on the side of the floor while
So
the
we
car
do
is
see the
slowly
car having to
passing by.
stop. Of course, the driver is extremely careful.
Just
He
to be
will
super
stop
sure
anytime
nobody's
any animal
getting
comes in
hurt, the
front of
car
him.
has stopped.
and we
And this is
see
the
that
two
there
sheep
are
got a
two
little bit
sheep
scared
who have
of the
separated from the
movement of
flock,
dog on side,
so
and
that
now
will
the mark
cost Lisa some
continue.
points for sure. Ideally, the dog is in between the sheep and the car, pushing the sheep to the side where the car is not, and they allow each other to pass very smoothly. Now we
So,
see that
traffic exercise
the car
over,
had
and
to
they're
stop,
reaching
the flock
now
stopped a little bit,
a
separated
stop.
a little bit, so that
So
will
the sheep
cost
is
Lisa a
moving
few
forward,
points.
and in that situation, Lisa is sending Lenus to the front of the flock to stop it. It is marked where ideally the flock should stop, and the judges need to be close enough to see whether the correct place is being held. Lisa's gone checking whether there's no traffic behind the stop line, and sending Lenus back to lift the sheep up and continue in their walk. After this exercise, they will collect the sheep together, put the sheep together again, collect the 3 which are waiting in the little pen, and then they will continue to grazing. Even this small exercise, you would think that it's pretty easy, yeah, just to let them together. But to have a clean, nice exercise of this kind requires a dog to be able to work on 2 separate flocks in a way, and to be very relaxed about the situation that they are separated. For all the herding dogs, this is situation which they do not like. It is very strongly built in their genes that all the sheep must be together. So leaving them somewhere and going focusing on another flock, it's something they have to learn in time and with practice. Yeah, Lena's just showed us he really wants them to be back
So
together.
Lisa chose to position Linus in between the big flock and the separated 3 sheep. It's for sure a good way to stabilize the big flock and prevent it from moving closer in the direction of the exit. But we did see that the 3 sheep who were released were quite worried about Linus and chose to go as fastly as possible around him. But as soon as they regained contact with the rest of the flock, of course, they feel safe and calm down. Now the entire flock can move into the grazing area.
I've told you a little bit about it already before when Karin was on the field. So they will reach the marked area, right now 20 to 20 meters, and they will stay there for about 3 minutes for the sheep to relax and eat a bit. It seems like the sheep already know what is going to happen, so they already started grazing on the way. That's a good sign because they are pretty relaxed about all the work of Lisa and Linus, which is a good sign.
by
which
the
is very
shepherd.
good
Lisa's
for
choosing to do an
traditional style
outrun.
breeds.
Outrun
At
is
the
where the
end,
dog goes in a very
Lina's
wide
making
arc
sure that
towards
everybody has
the
seen
sheep.
by a little bark, and the sheep is nicely following the handler now.
And when the dog is behind the sheep should start moving in the direction of the shepherd. Ideally, we
You
like
might
to
have
see that the sheep
heard
don't
before
get
that Belgian
disturbed too
shepherds
much
are
by the
very
dog
likely
while he's
to
still
bark.
running, but only when
But when they
the
work,
dog
when they
comes
focus,
behind
you
the
will
flock.
not hear much barking.
We want to see that the
Some of
sheep
them will
start
choose to
walking
bark
in
when the
exactly a
sheep
straight
will
line,
not
preferably
want to
a
move,
straight line towards the
instead
shepherd.
of little nip, which is a
Also
good
preferably
tool
in a calm way, but very often they
to
do
manage
take
the
a bit of a
flock.
run. Was a nice
But
outrun.
overly barking
Outrun
during
is
their
not
work will only
necessarily
show that there
a
is a stress
very
of the
natural
dog
behavior of this breed.
and
There are
some
other breeds
discomfort
who are
perhaps, and
excellent at
definitely
that.
the sheep
For
will not be
example,
so happy about it.
the border collies. But this breed,
So right now Lisa is
very
executing
often
the
you just need to
difficult
go and
obstacle.
teach your dog
As I told you
the
before,
movement. It's not
simulating
necessarily
some
natural. Doesn't mean
difficult
they can't learn
passage
it.
in the mountains or in the forest.
So now Lisa is doing
Unfortunately, I
the
think Lisa
difficult
has
passages.
taken a little wrong direction,
She
so there
has
might be a few
found
points
an
lost.
alternative route,
But on the
first
other
of all,
hand,
than
until
what
now,
was
so
ordered by the judge, but
quite perfect
also
exercise on most
the
parts of
not
the
all the
trial,
sheep
so
went
I
through
don't
the
think
same opening
this
at the
loss
right
of course
time.
will be crucial.
So probably that will cost Lisa a few points, but she has again
And the team,
retained
watch
control
out for
of
this
the
little
flock.
sheep, which thinks it's over.
Everybody's still with
Not
her.
yet.
Everybody's feeling happy and calm,
Little
and
lady,
she will
or who are
continue
you?
her course as she goes
So
into
now
the
they are
alley for a
reaching
bit of a
the
drive.
Again,
She
there
needs to
is now
drive
a
the sheep
netting
to the left
which
across the
helps
field.
direction of the flock, and they have to push the sheep in front of
But
them.
the sheep would really much rather go to
Sometimes
the
it
right
takes a
where
little
the
bit
exit of the
time
field
to
is.
persuade the sheep that they should
So
leave
it
the
takes
handler.
a strong dog
You see, they
to be
like
able to
stay
persuade
with
the sheep
Lisa,
to
they
keep
trust
going.
her a lot,
The difficulty
and they would
about
like to be
switching to a
there.
drive
So now Linus
is
has to
that
push a little
the sheep
more,
have
stop
been
to
used
be
to
that
walking
gentle,
behind
and
the
just
shepherd
try
now,
to tell them to
and
move
all of
on.
a sudden we ask them to
You have
walk
seen
on
Lisa
their
have-
own
has
without a
used
shepherd
her
leading
hand to
them.
clap a little bit on her thigh. That kind of sound
Getting
can
them
also
started can
help
be a little
the
bit
sheep to start
difficult, but
moving.
now that they're underway, actually we see very nice calm movement from
And
the
now
flock.
a nice drive, steady and easy.
Linus is pushing them, but
And they push them
Lisa is
together
also
around
very
7
close
meters.
to the flock. It's possible that the judges will discount a few points, because in a drive, really, they want to see the handler behind the line of the dog. From this perspective, at least, it looks like she's next to or even in front of the dog, which does influence the sheep. It means she is pushing the sheep at least as much as the dog is doing that. And
And
this
they are reaching
exercise
the end
is
of the
meant for the
netting,
dog to push
so
the sheep.
the drive
So
exercise
potentially
is now
the
completed.
judges might discount
very
a few
nice way.
points for this,
And now Lisa can take again
but that's
the
up
beat
to
of
them
the
to
flock
decide, of course.
and continue. We can hear a bell ringing. That means that they have last 5 minutes until there is the time. That means the limit will run through. So they have to think about what they're doing now, but I think they have time enough to finish all the tasks in time still. Now there is another stop executed. Linus has taken rather the second command to stop, and I think the stop was made a little bit from too steady situation where the sheep was already a little bit grazing. This is sometimes tricky because the judges want to see that the flock is really in movement while you're sending your dog to stop them. So sometimes you have to on purpose make the sheep move so that the dog can execute the exercise correctly. But I think the sheep were secure and were well stabilized, so it was a secure situation anyway. And one last exercise before penning, which is the protection of the food. Perhaps it's getting a little more difficult now for them to handle those sheep because they don't want to walk that much anymore. They feel like having a graze instead of walking. And that may make some situations a little more complicated sometimes. So they are reaching the area with the bowls, and now Lenus has to be on the left side so that nobody goes to the bowls. There he goes on the correct side, he just needs to wait there. There. And then Lisa will pretend to bring something to the bowl. And let's see whether some sheep will try to go there and check whether there's something nice for them, tasty. Lenus is picking up the flock, and nobody should stop by the bowls, which is not happening, so there's a good pressure from Lenus to the sheep. The truth is, if there would be an actual food in the bowls, the sheep are very, very smart. You might think it's just a sheep. People would say, sheep is very stupid animal, but that's totally not true. They're very smart, they will recognize many faces, they know each other one by one, they have hierarchy in the flock, and they definitely can smell whether there actually is food or not. Like your dog, if you pretend to have food in your hand, they will know. You will not trick them. So now a good stabilization in front of the gate is important, so that nobody rushes in before Lisa can fully open the gate, and so that they can nicely go inside without any banging on the gate or hurting anyone. Lenus is holding the gate, and now he will be asked to bring the flock inside. Alright, one sheep has actually went around the gate. This is a difficult situation, so calmly he must bring that one back. And there she goes. And that's the end, and they successfully finished their run.
So put your hands together for this handler, Lisa and Lenus. Well done.
Come on. So demokraattist, kun annat litsari jokaiselle, joka tulee vastaan sua baaris. Kun Jeesus kysyi faijaltaan, kuo vaadis, se sanoo joka M on saalis. Poikani, ei oo olemassa valintoja väärin, mut paras on usein sitä, mikä on populääri. Voit etsiä sitä
Some real Finnish music.
Ääri, mut ei laadulla korvata määriä. Sun reviiri, se on vaan snadilaatikko. Kun puhallaan sun korvaan, se on inspiraatio. Sanktiot saatiin jo, älä kysy vaadinko. Meillä on laguuni, jäätikkö, avaruus ja aavikko. Kun minä haluun miellyttää massaa.
So, entering the last two competitors.
Ja tiedän, et tulovia satoja mun tapasia, heitä ilman satasia. Maapallo palaa takapihan liian vakavina, ulkona taas satapia. Kuule huutoja joka suunnista musastuudesta.
One team from Italy and finally one team from Czech Republic. So be prepared and stay tuned.
Senttejä hustlaa, ja senkin takia pitäis kaikki muka uhrata musan teku juhlaa. Kun kerran vuodessa mä saan pari tonnin siitä taikaani tähtiä tuhlaa.
Are you ready to party?
Almost heaven.
on the field we have Federica Lando from Italy. Flower della Valle Incantata. I'm not sure what the call name of the dog is. I'm sorry. Probably some of you will know, but I don't know. Let's assume it's Flower, but maybe not. But anyway, Federica is halfway through her course, more or less. She just did the traffic exercise. She was able to pass the car quite smoothly, but now we see the sheep turning back a little bit before being corrected and moving in the right direction again. You can see the sun has come out and it's pretty nice weather here now. And we see Federica has chosen to do the hard work in her summer outfit. Quite understandable, because even though it's just a bit of walking and relaxing with your dog and your sheep, somehow we always end up a little bit heated. So next up for Federica is to reunite her flock and get the 3 separated sheep back with the rest. So Federica is choosing to leave the big flock quite far away from the separating pen. Her dog is in between. There is a small risk that the sheep will choose to actually turn around and just go to the exit. So it will be quite interesting. She's even choosing the door which is facing the exit of the field. She's not choosing the door directly towards the other sheep. So it'll be interesting to see where the sheep feel they need to go. So these are such nice examples of the different choices we make as handlers and how this influences the behavior of the sheep. So by parking the flock quite far away and by opening a door of the pen which is not in a direct line towards the flock, you could see the sheep hesitating at first and then deciding that they really didn't feel safe about the situation and they needed to reunite with the flock as fast as possible. So not completely relaxed situation for the sheep, and there could have been, that's the influence of the choices we make. Yeah? So if she might have opened a different door, which would have given the sheep direct line of sight to the rest of the flock, or if the rest of the flock would have been a bit closer, it's very well possible that the behavior of the sheep would have been different. But with making these choices, we saw what happened, and the sheep were a little bit stressed and decided to go as fast as they could to reunite with the flock. This is also one of the things that the handlers need to, as soon as possible, as quickly as possible when they come to a trial, to try to assess and to understand in every different flock. In general, people don't know the sheep in a trial. They might have been to this same farm for some training, it's possible, but in general, people are unfamiliar with that particular flock of sheep, and it's not always easy to predict their behavior. So from the moment that we come onto the trial, onto the field to do a trial, onto the farm to do a trial, we're always watching the sheep, and especially watching other competitors and trying to learn from the behavior of the sheep that we see. And based on everything we've seen up until the moment that we step into the field, we make decisions to try to make our trial, our course, as smooth as possible. And the more often we do it, the more often we make these decisions and we evaluate if we're happy with the outcome, yes or no, the more we learn and the better hopefully it gets. Of course, dogs in level 3, teams in level 3 should have quite a lot of experience. It takes some time to get to level 3. They will have done a certain number of trials at least. Certain amount of training will have gone in, and all this experience allows us to make better and better decisions and to make better assessments of the sheep that, even though we don't know it, we can more and more easily pick up the signals they're giving off, read the body language they have, and make the decisions that will make our trial go smoother. In the lower levels, this can be a really, really interesting difference between handlers who might have a young dog in a low level but have a lot of experience and already brought different dogs to higher levels, and a handler with a dog, young or old, doesn't matter, but who is just getting started in herding. Especially this handler who is a beginner will make the difference, not necessarily the dog in the lower levels. An experienced handler can work with a relatively inexperienced dog and still more easily get a good result, because the handler can compensate for the dog, can make smart decisions that will help and support the dog, and a less experienced handler is still learning, still discovering this world of sheep and dogs and herding, and it will be more difficult to always make the right decision and to know what will happen if they do choose something. It seems like 3 minutes of grazing are up, which means Federica needs to go to the post and find a way to retrieve her sheep towards her. It's up to her to decide how. She's initially chosen to leave her dog somewhere halfway, and now she can either choose to call her dog towards her, which she is doing, and then start an outrun, but she could have also chosen to send the dog immediately around and not ask her to come back first. The dog did quite a fast and a little bit tight outrun. You can see how the sheep are reacting. It's a fast dog. It's a pretty intense dog. But it's also very capable of switching to a lower energy, and this is a really good example of that. Coming out of an outrun, very often we see the dogs stay a little bit excited for a few minutes, but now already the dog has gone into very calm movements, and that's experience. It's experience of the dog to switch between high intensity and low intensity, and to know not to get too excited and to hang on to that excitement. Very nice work. And that's also very smart course design by our two wonderful judges, Saskia Klaassen-Polman from the Netherlands and Laura Vassallo from Italy. They are both very experienced international judges, and what they've done here with the course design is really quite smart. So immediately after an outrun with a bit of speed and adrenaline, they have put quite a difficult passage where the dog has to be patient and precise and guide the sheep in a very calm way through the correct exits and entrances. And switching from this high intensity and speed to this precision work is difficult. Not every dog can do it so easily. And it's very nice to have it as an element in the course, to have an extra test of the dog's ability to do this type of work and to switch between different types of work modes. So next up is the drive. Dog is able to push them very easily. No hesitation of the flock. The only risk is that they keep going faster and faster. They did speed up a little bit, then they slow down again. Let's see how they finish. So both Federica and the dog have a relatively fast pace of walking. This was reflected in the flock also going at a bit of a trot, but at no point did they really run away. did they feel the need to speed up further. So it's very controlled drive, just at a little higher pace than some other people might walk. So there's another stop. The border of the grazing area is the line in front of which everybody has to stop, both the sheep, the dog and the handler. But the judges do want to see the dog actually doing the work of stopping the sheep. These are sheep who follow the handler quite nicely if they're not being pushed, which means that if the handler stops walking, the sheep are quite likely to stop walking as well. And that's not what the judges want to see. Of course, it's an easy way to do a stop, but the judges really want to see the dog understands that when the sheep come in front or when the handler chooses a certain position, that the dog knows it's his job to go to the front and block the sheep from moving ahead. Last exercise before the repen is vegetation. In real life, it's very possible that you're moving your flock of sheep past a really nice field of cabbage, carrots, corn, or whatever else it may be that your neighbor's growing. And of course, your neighbor won't be happy if your sheep eat half of his crop. So the dog should be able to keep the sheep out of an area where the sheep want to go. To try to mimic this in a trial, there are some feeding troughs on the floor, on the ground there. The sheep know the feeding troughs. They know that often there's food there. But yesterday the judges noticed that the attraction of the feeding troughs is not huge. Of course, we're just coming out of summer. Sheep have been eating grass all summer. They've not had a lot of extra feed. It's different from wintertime where they might get extra feed almost every day. So now the attraction wasn't so big. So to try to tempt the sheep a little bit more, there is a little basket in the feeding troughs where the handler has to pick something out of the basket. And by doing this, you're kind of mimicking the act of putting feed into the feeding troughs. But actually we've seen that sheep are not enormously triggered by it, and it's very, very feasible for the dogs to keep the sheep away from the feeding troughs. We really don't like to use real feed in the trials for two reasons. One, the sheep could have such a strong reaction to the feed that no dog is able to keep them away. The other thing is it does create unfair competition because we reuse the flocks of sheep. They have a first run, all of them, a first time that they're on the field, and they don't know the course yet, but they are used a second time. And the second time they will be aware that there is feed in a certain place in the course, and they will react a lot different than the first time they've come around there. So that's quite unfair competition between the person who uses the flock for the first time and who uses the flock for the second time. So we really don't like to do that. We try to avoid it whenever possible. That is a really nice repen and overall a very, very good run for Federica from Italy.
Oh, put your hands together. Federica and Fosca. Mille grazie.
Dog is also very content with itself, showing how happy it is. It's going in to inspect the trailer, but the reward for the dog quite obviously is to be allowed to carry the stick. And that is the little ritual that the dog and handler have created together. Very nice to see. Good afternoon. Last participant in level 3. Last participant in level 3, Jitka and Kai with Black Destiny Kai from Czech Republic. Czech has an incredibly strong team up until now. They only have 3 dogs, all of them in level 3, but they've been scoring very, very high points so far. So let's see if Jitka and Kai can keep up this habit of scoring high points. Kai is a dog that likes to bark. He has a lot of power, a lot of energy, and it's not always easy for him to contain himself. And I know I have a daughter of Kai's, and she's got her father's temperament. But actually the course has been going really smoothly up until now. There has been some barking. Sheep are not really disturbed by it a lot. The work in the trailer was also really nice. Kai went in, and despite him being such a big, strong, powerful dog, and also quite an energetic dog, the sheep were really not disturbed. They came out of the trailer very nice, very calm, and they were able to continue immediately on their way. The traffic also went very well, and now it's time to reunite the 3 lost little sheep with the rest of the flock. Jitka and Kai on the way to the grazing area. We've got 3 minutes of grazing in with them. Not really a bad thing to be sitting in the grass with your dog and your sheep in the sunshine at the end of September. For the Dutch normal weather, average weather, we are very, very happy to have this type of sunshine and temperatures at the end of September. It could be very different, it could be wet and cold, windy and chilly, but today it's the perfect day. Not too warm for the sheep and the dogs, not too cold for the people, and a bit of sunshine to make everybody happy. We really hope you're enjoying the live stream. It has taken quite a lot of effort and a bit of time to get it in this place, in YouTube. But finally we managed. Everybody worked incredibly hard behind the scenes to make it happen. We're very thankful to the people, the team who have facilitated this entire live stream. And they have had some unlucky, unhappy moments and probably a bad night's sleep over it not working, but now it is. The sun has come out. We're all happy and enjoying it. If you are enjoying this live stream that we are providing for you completely free of charge, we would be very happy, very grateful if you would consider a voluntary donation. On our YouTube channel, on the page of the YouTube channel, should be a GoFundMe link. It should be possible from anywhere in the world to make a voluntary donation of size to be determined by yourself, and it would help us to have this live stream again in the future, but actually also to make sure that we can reward the team who's done this live stream, who've done it completely voluntarily, and to make it possible to reward those people for their hard work. So while the while the audience is enjoying some typical Dutch treats, poffertjes in this case, Jitka is still in the grazing area. We saw the sheep move a bit, but they remained inside the grazing area. They are still grazing, looking very calm. And it looks like Jitka's just heading to the far side of the grazing area to make sure the sheep don't get the idea of crossing the border there. And waiting till her time is up. It's also nicer for her dog to be in the shade, even though it's not really warm. And we enjoy the sunshine a lot. Dogs can get warm quite easily. So she's chosen to put her dog in the shade and allow it a little bit cooler a few minutes before work resumes. Alright, 3 minutes seem to be up. Jitka goes to the post from where she needs to retrieve the sheep somehow. So Jitka's choosing to support her dog in the outrun by moving along with him. It allows her to push him a little bit more to the outside. If you know your dog would struggle with this exercise, you can do two things. You can try to do it the way the judges asked and risk the dog messing up and creating chaos with the sheep, or you can choose a different execution, which might not be perfect. It will cost you some points, but at least this way you don't allow chaos and stress to come into the flock, and it ensures you can continue on your way in the rest of the course. So that's what Jitka has done. She has decided that probably that outrun in these situations, this particular situation, is not feasible for Kai, and therefore she's chosen to walk with him and guide him on the way. So it's interesting to see that when Kai is working and they're just moving together in a nice flow, he doesn't feel the need to bark. But especially with the passages where Kai's work has to be a little bit more precise and Jitka has to be a little bit more strict with where he is, you see a bit more barking from Kai. It is quite precise maneuvering with a big flock. So Jitka is asking him to slow down, to wait in certain strategic places. And the dog might sometimes have the opinion that he doesn't want to do that. He wants to be somewhere else. He wants to continue moving. Alright, so time for the drive. With the impact that Kai has on the flock, it should be quite okay to start him moving. And that's exactly what we see. As soon as Kai focuses attention on the flock, they are quite willing to move. Now ideally Jitka would be walking behind her dog and the dog would be looking forward towards the sheep, but it's quite clear from Kai's reaction that he finds this a difficult exercise. Kom maar hier naartoe. So once they're moving, Kai calms down, but especially when Jitka is giving directions and when the sheep have stopped moving, Kai is experiencing a bit of pressure, a bit of stress, and voicing that quite loudly. Shh. last exercise before the repen is a vegetation exercise. It's where the dog should protect a certain area where the sheep are not allowed to come, as if there was vegetation there, maybe the crops of the neighbor or a grass field, very delicious grass belonging to another farmer. And that's difficult to mimic in a trial. We could use real feed, but really don't like to do that because it creates quite an unfair situation between the participants. So the judges have done their best to mimic this situation without any disturbance of the competitive element. So final stabilization of the day, I would say. After that, the sheep get some well-deserved rest, and so do the people. We will have a bit of a party and a barbecue tonight. If you're not here, that's a shame. We would have liked to have you here. You can still come and visit tomorrow and the day after. We still 2 full days of trials ahead of us. A little bit loud, but for the rest, really smooth repen. And that is it for Jitka and Kai. Really well done. It's looking like Czech as a country has probably most likely taken the lead in the team competition. I haven't seen the scores yet for all the countries, but with 3 very good runs today, I would expect them to be very high in the list of the countries. We will make all the scores of today, the individual scores of today, and the preliminary country rankings available on the website later today. And you can check it and see if your favorites are doing well. At least Jitka is very happy. Good to see that. And we are also very happy that we had such a good day. We will be back tomorrow morning, probably around 8 o'clock, maybe a little bit later, 8:30, with the start of IHT 2. Level 2 is starting in the morning, level 1 in the afternoon. And we hope to see you again on YouTube. Bye-bye.
For the crew and helpers, we have this next song, of course.
They're another border collie, and their supercilious attitude toward every other dog that exists.
Especially for Marieke.
I'm ready